introduce yourself?
My name is Laura. She, her. I live in beautiful Squamish and I've lived here for about 7 years.
7 years. Where'd you come from?
Originally Germany. I'm born and raised in Germany and I came to Canada for the first time 10 or 11 years ago now, studying abroad in beautiful Victoria. Totally fell in love with BC, fell in love with the country, traveled a lot, and then I came back a couple years later with a working holiday visa. And I was one of the people who come and want to see all the space that there is and all the wilderness. And yeah, and then I found myself in Squamish in 2018 for the first time. Had no intention to really come here, came here for a weekend, was fascinated with the access to the mountains, and I'm kind of still here.
What did you go to Victoria for?
I did my undergrad or my tour, like my bachelor in tourism management in Munich, um, and I did a term of that in Victoria at Royal Roads University.
Oh, fun. And then how did you find Squamish?
I, at the time, was actually working as a nanny on Bowen Island, so a little island just a little bit south of here in the Sound. And I wanted to do just a weekend away. And I came up here just because it was kind of close. It was within reach. I didn't have a car, I could travel up here with the bus. And I stayed at the hostel just down the street here. And yeah, I didn't even know very much about Squamish. I had passed through here before, but I didn't know what it was about. I had no idea about the trail systems here. And I fell in love with it over that weekend and decided I wanted to stay. It happens quite a bit. It's a very typical Squamish story. You either come, I think, very intentionally for something, or you just find yourself here and you never leave again.
Yeah. You said it was getting close to the mountains that made
Hmm.
you want that access fascinated you.
Yeah.
So what do you do in the mountains?
So when I first came here, I just hiked. I hiked a lot and I couldn't believe how easy it was to just walk to a hiking trail, have an amazing hike, have fantastic views, and come back down and go home. And now I also mountain bike quite a lot. So those are my two mountain sports that I do. I would like to say I'm a skier. I'm not really a skier anymore. Sometimes I go ski touring, but I don't really feel wintry living in Squamish because we don't get a lot of snow. But I mountain bike a lot. Had my first ride of the season today. It was fantastic.
What's your favorite trail?
Oh, it's a good question. I have a few favorite trails. Um, I like slabby trails a lot. So I like trails like Leave of Absence. I also love the trail systems in Valley Cliff. Those trails are a little bit more like up and down, not very flowy. You kind of have to push your bike quite a bit, but I like it's very rewarding. And classics like Rupert are always amazing. Um, Mickey's Man Boobs, lots of beautiful trails in Squamish.
How did you discover the trails?
Somebody took me under their wing when I first lived here and was curious about mountain biking. It was a friend who was a mountain bike coach at the time. And so I just rented a bike and he showed me, he took me to Half Nelson, Wonderland, all the typical beginner trails, and introduced me to an app called Trail Forks. And Trail Forks is really helpful and I would say pretty essential for mountain biking in town because it shows you all the trails, shows you all the conditions, reviews, gives you a good idea of where you're at and if you ever get lost. So it was a lot of people who introduced me to the sport who I would go with because I you can look at an app and you can see the trails, but you might not know what's a good lap to do. You know what trails are nice to connect. And yeah, so friends who were already pretty seasoned mountain bikers along with the app.
Would you have you taken anybody else out? Have
I
you done that?
have
Oh,
many times. I took my dad out when he was visiting from Germany. I take any friends out that come visit, and I have had some friends who started mountain biking, and I've now introduced them to the trails, which is awesome. Pretty full circle moment.
tell me about cultural differences between Squamish and Germany. And where in Germany did you live?
It's a great question. I was born in Bavaria. I'm from a beautiful region called the Bavarian Forest, and it's very close to the border to the Czech Republic. So it's southeast Germany and also southeast Bavaria. Pretty mountainous, pretty rural. I'm from a very, very small town of like 1,000 people. And I also lived in other places in Germany, namely Munich is where I went to university, so one of the biggest cities. But I've always stayed in Bavaria, which is arguably the most beautiful part of Germany. And culturally, it's very different. I find that one thing that always bugged me a little bit about Germany, and I think especially being from a really small town, is that people are quite concerned with what other people are doing. And there's a very strong sense of, well, this is how you do things. Like you go to school, and then you go to university, and then you meet someone and you get married and you build a house. And if you don't follow that path, in Germany, it's not unlikely that people find that really questionable and will comment on that quite a lot. And I found, probably because I'm not from here and I have no family here, people just kind of see me as who I am and they don't really care about what path I might have taken. And I find people just let other people do their thing a lot more. I find also something that I really appreciate about Canada, BC, Squamish in general, is that people really make the most of their weekends. People have less paid time off work here compared to Germany or most European countries, but they make the most of their weekends. You know, like they get out, they go camping, they might drive pretty far, especially if you're a German, and the distances are just so different. Whereas in Germany, people might not do that. They wait for, like, yeah, having a proper time off, proper vacation to do things. And so that's very different too. I think overall people are a bit more relaxed in Squamish. Yeah.
Do you think you'd go back to Germany, or do you think Squamish is your home?
I would honestly say maybe neither. Maybe. I like to not think too far ahead, which is good and bad. I could see myself maybe one day returning to Europe. I don't know that I necessarily would go back to Germany. Squamish is very much home. I'm very comfortable here. I have a fantastic community. I have a job I like. I feel very at home here. But I'm also open to living elsewhere in Canada. My partner's from Quebec, and we often just think about where we might want to live in the future. But for now, Squamish, the Sea to Sky corridor specifically, is very much home. When I first came here, I jumped into an existing community because um, I stayed at a hostel that had a lot of people come through all the time, and there were a lot of people who would stay for several months at a time. And so inherently, the community was very inclusive because it was fellow travelers, people who might stay, might not stay, and they embraced me very much so. And I stayed there and worked there for a little bit, and that was really helpful. And then in between, I moved back to Germany for a year, came back in 2020, and at that point, I still knew some people who had stayed since I first spent time here, which was really helpful and really nice because, especially coming back during COVID in 2020, there was a risk of feeling a bit isolated. And it was helpful to know people for sure. And then I think when I started doing sports that a lot of people do here, while I think a lot of those sports tend to be a little bit cliquey, to be fully honest, people in Squamish strongly associate themselves with the sport that they do, which is good and bad, but sometimes can lead to a lack of inclusivity, which I'm not too fond of. I personally have had really good experiences. Like everyone I've met in the different sports that I do or the jobs that I've had has been really welcoming. I still we're in Rose Park right now. Over here is the Squamish Adventure Center. This is where I had my first proper job in Squamish, and I'm still very close with a lot of people that I met there in 2020 or even earlier in 2018. So I think if you approach people with authenticity and a desire to really connect and are not just looking for superficial connections to have people to go bike with or climb with, then you're going to be able to build a beautiful community and people will be very welcoming. I think a great thing, okay,
How else
one
might
thing that is sounds crazy, but Squamish is run on Facebook. Everything in Squamish is organized on Facebook. If you come here and you don't have Facebook, you might have a hard time because this is where you find organized groups of like women that like to get out on the trails, bikers, climbers, I don't know, people that just share interests, fellow artists if you're an artist. I think there's a lot of opportunity to connect and just get an idea of where people are and how they meet, and to just create touch points online. And then if you want to meet people in person, volunteering I think is another amazing thing that you can do in town, and there's plenty of opportunities. I personally organize a lot of events for work, like the Squamish Reuse It Fair, or repair cafes, or clothing swaps, that we always invite people to come and volunteer at. And a lot of the time, I see people who have just moved here and they want to meet people in the community, they want to connect to the community. And it's a great place to go because there's usually people who have volunteered for many years and they've lived here for many years, they know other people in the community, and they're a great touch point, I think, to have. And then if you're working from home, which a lot of people do now that live here, don't just work from home. Like, go out and about, work at the cafes in town, put your headphones down and just talk to people. Um, it's yeah, I think it's fairly doable. I think I'm personally someone who is relatively outgoing, so I don't find it hard to find people. But I think if you struggle a little bit with that, find something that has a purpose, or like a mutual shared interest that connects you to other
Okay.
people.
Do you have a favorite neighborhood in town? And
Oh,
have you lived in more than one?
100%. I've lived all over. Well, not all over, but pretty much. I've lived in Valleycliff, I've lived in Breckendale, I now live in downtown. I've lived down the street here, which is close to Brennan Park. Don't even know what this part of town is called, to be honest. But my favorite neighborhood by far, and I think this will never change, is Brackendale. I think Brackendale is very special. It's a little bit its own little village. It feels like it. It's a bit further from town, but you can just bike downtown easy in 20-25 minutes. And it is pretty quiet, which is beautiful, and just feels quite, like, I wouldn't say rural, but it feels really quiet, and people have space and people are all very friendly. It's a very sunny compared to other parts of town. So yeah, Brackendale all the
A
way.
favorite? Do you have a favorite restaurant?
Yeah, I have a few good ones that I like. I really like the Broken Seal, but just downtown by the water. They do amazing food and really good cocktails. They've only been open for like maybe 2 years, I want to say, and they're amazing. I also like to go to A Frame for a good burger and a good beer. Great combination. And then I live downtown, so I often find myself at the Copper Coil because it's down the street. And then another one of my favorites is Locavore, just to hang out. If I feel a bit isolated or I've worked from home all day, I might just go to Locavore and I will run into a person that I know 100%. In the summer, this is where people run into each other. And then another one, oh, that's fantastic food, is Taka Ramen. So there are a few good places in town. I think I have two things that I try to live by that I think are very basic, but also a little deep, and at the same time, I think very applicable. Two things I think: remember that you're always allowed to change your opinion. I had to learn this in my life. It's okay to change your opinion about something, to change your mind about something that you wanted to do, you might no longer want to do. That is okay. You don't owe anything to anyone. And then the other thing is, there's a solution for everything. I try very hard to be solution oriented in life and not problem oriented, because it's usually one or the other. And my parents have definitely raised me with the belief that there is a solution for absolutely anything.
Or is it a private one?
I mean, I feel like I've changed my mind on a lot of things, to be honest. And I always thought that I always thought that that is not, you know, that is not okay, or like you need to pursue and continue pursuing what you once decided to pursue. I don't feel like that at all anymore. One thing in my life, for example, my family has a family business. I was like raised in a family business. It was founded by my granddad over 70 years ago. And there was always a bit of an unspoken expectation that me and my brother would maybe join the family business. And I was always very unsure. And then I gave it a try and I worked there for a little bit, 2 years. And I wanted to give it a thorough attempt because I wanted to honor what that family business means as well for my family. And then while midway through, I definitely could see myself and could see this being my future. I just had a moment of clarity where I was like, it's just not for me. I don't think this will make me happy, even though I might be good at it. And changing my mind on that and having to explain that to family especially was hard. It was very, very hard, but I know that it was the right decision for me. Much.
I'm not certain that
There's
was.
one book that I read in the past year that has really stayed with me for a while. It's called Five Little Indians. Very good book. You look like you've read it. That I can really recommend. It's not necessarily, it's a heavy book at times, but it's I think, a very educational book. And I can, yeah, super important to read more of stories like that. I think what I liked about this book was that it is a novel, but it's very inspired by real events and very much in line with what really happened in residential schools and graduates of residential schools. And for me, I just learned so much. I had learned about the residential school system before, and just how horrific that was, but I didn't really ever learn a lot about what happened once people left the schools. And what I liked about this book, that it really focused on just how disoriented people were usually when they finished schools and then found themselves somewhere, often um, in Vancouver. And I liked that it focused on how the story then continued, and how the past that people experienced, the traumatic experiences they had, how that shaped their life really in a fundamental way going forward. So I live downtown. I like to walk every day. I walk in the estuary quite a lot. I just like to go on a good walk once a day somewhere in town, and there's so many beautiful places to choose from. I love walking in Valley Cliff along the river. I love Fisherman's Park in Brackendale. And then I do a few other things apart from mountain biking and hiking. I ride horses, and I also dance. I do heel dancing with a school called Luminesque that has a lot of classes in Squamish. Highly recommend for anyone who wants to try it out. And there's a lot of activities available in Squamish. If you wanted to, you could do something else twice a day. But that keeps me pretty busy. And what I like about living in Squamish and living in downtown Squamish, and this is what makes me feel at home here, is that when I walk out my front door and I walk to like get some groceries, or I go down the street to get a matcha, guaranteed, unless it's maybe in the wintertime and people try to escape the rain, but otherwise guaranteed I will run into someone I know. And it might not even be someone I know well, but I know I've lived here now for 7 years or so, and I know some people, and it makes me feel at home being able to run into people and just say, hey, how's your day going? How are you getting on? And I think that's a really beautiful thing. And Squamish is at that sweet spot where it has obviously grown so much, but still, I think it feels small enough to have these encounters that make us all feel a little bit more connected with each other. So, heel dancing basically just means dancing in high heels. They are very flexible. They're dance heels, so they're really bendy and a lot easier to walk in and strut in and dance in. Um, it's very fun. It is, it's more sexier dance than I would say, like maybe hip hop, arguably, but it's very fun, and a lot of women in town do it from all walks of life. I've danced in groups with people I'm in my 30s. There are people in their 50s. There are people who just had babies, who want to feel like connected to their body again. And it's a pretty beautiful, safe space to bring women together. And every 6 months we have a show in Vancouver at Celebrities Nightclub, and we have a ton of fun. There's different levels. There's new to Luminesque, kitten heels, pumps, stilettos. Those are the names of the levels, and then there's often several groups at each level. They, if you want to try it out, they usually have tryout classes at the beginning of a new term. New terms start, I think, usually in February, and then again in September. And you can try it out for free. You can see if you like it, if it feels good, if you like the movement. And it is for people who don't have any dance experience, it's totally open. Yeah, they teach you everything. They teach you the technique. They teach you how to walk and dance safely in high heels. It's very fun. Yes, I am personally and professionally really passionate about sustainability. Um, I like I like that Squamish is generally a pretty progressive place, and that people are generally, I feel like, quite caring about the environment and about the planet. And yeah, I mean, I would love to see, I'm very passionate about single use items. I would love to see everyone using reusable mugs all the time. I would love for us to just never see any single use mugs again. And um, yeah, it's something that has been really dear to my heart for a long time. I got a master's in sustainability, and yeah, learned so much about it and the challenges that we're facing. And I think while a little community can't solve climate change, we can do what we can at a local level, and we can inspire other communities as well. Squamish has been pretty progressive with a lot of the local bylaws and the local lawmaking to advance things like a circular economy, and to advance things like reducing waste in construction and demolition, which actually has inspired many other communities in BC to develop similar bylaws. And while bylaws are not everything, they're very much just a part of the puzzle policy. It's good to, I think, take a stand and set an example and see what can be done and how progress can be inspired at a community level. And sorry, one other thing. Okay, one thing that, so personally, okay, hold on, I'm trying to think how I say this so that you can be a snippet. What has Squamish done to inspire others? So personally, I'm really, really passionate about waste diversion and reducing waste that doesn't need to be here and that is unnecessary. And we can do so much at an individual level, but we can also do so much at a community level. And I think one thing that Squamish has been doing for a long time, and that has actually in fact inspired other communities, is organize events that make it easier for folks to reduce the waste that they might generate otherwise. We have an event in Squamish, which I have the privilege of organizing, called the Reuse It Fair. It happens in June. It happens on June 6th this year. It's at Brandon Park Recreation Center. Do not miss it. It's the absolute best event. You can bring, as long as it's in functioning condition and in like decent condition, you can bring whatever you want to bring, drop it off. You no longer need it. Somebody else will want to have it and they will get it for free. And you can also pick up whatever your heart desires. You can come in and you can pick up 3 bed frames and like a bag full of clothes and toys for your kids. And it's all free. And, we organize this to give people a container where this can happen, because especially for large items, this is really hard to facilitate. And it's a ton of fun. People just get stoked for the Reuse It Fair. And if you're interested in possibly volunteering, then leave a comment and you'll be connected to me.